Donna, step out
Look at me.
here.
Do I look like someone who would do something like that? This is not
enforcement of students.
For 19 years, people trusted Donna Eckhart with their children's futures. What she did with that trust, and with the money raised in a dead teenager's name, is why she's being arrested right now.
Name who was never enrolled in your...
I am a good person. I have always tried.
She would not be allowed to finish that sentence. Within 48 hours, detectives from the Hancock County Sheriff's Office would arrive at her classroom with a sealed search warrant for the scholarship binder, the bank records, and every award letter she had ever printed on Findlay High School letterhead. 6 award cycles, $181,400. A memorial fund built in the name of a teenager who never made it to graduation. And the guidance counselor who knew every parent in town by their first name. I have to ask before we go any further, would you trust one single person, alone and uncounted, with the money your community raised in your dead child's name? Tell me in the comments. And if you are not subscribed yet, now is the time. This channel covers the cases small-town newspapers bury in the back of the local section. Donna Marie Eckhart was born in the spring of 1970 in a hospital on the edge of Findlay, Ohio, the second daughter of a Marathon oil refinery mechanic and a part-time school secretary. The Eckharts lived on a quiet block off North Main, in a brick ranch with a detached garage where her father rebuilt carburetors on Saturday mornings, and her mother stretched a single paycheck across 4 people without complaining about it. Donna grew up understanding that her town was small, that everyone watched, and that a good name was a thing you protected. The Eckhart name was, in Findlay terms, a good one. She graduated from Findlay High School in 1988. The yearbook captioned her senior photo, "Most likely to remember your birthday." She was president of the Future Teachers of America chapter, a member of the choir, and the senior who organized the canned food drive for the United Way Pantry on Lima Avenue. Her classmates remembered her as the girl who walked freshmen to their lockers when they got turned around in the first week, and who wrote thank you notes to teachers at the end of every semester, whether they had given her an A or not. She enrolled at Bowling Green State University in the fall of 1988 on a partial scholarship from the Findlay Rotary Club, the same civic organization that would, 2 decades later, write checks into the fund she would steal from. She majored in education with a concentration in school counseling and finished in 4 years. Her performance reviews from her student teaching placement at a middle school outside Toledo called her warm with adolescence, patient under deadline pressure, and the kind of presence a counseling office needs. One supervisor wrote that she had an unusual gift for sitting with discomfort. The phrase stuck. She kept that evaluation in a folder for the next 30 years. She married Greg Eckhart, an HVAC technician from Fostoria, in the summer of 1993. They bought a 2-story on Cherry Street in 1996, the kind of house where the porch light stayed on for any neighbor's kid who needed a ride home. They had no children of their own. Donna later told a co-worker she felt like she had 2,000 of them anyway, and most of them grew up to invite her to their weddings. In 2004, after 8 years in a middle school counseling office outside Toledo, she was hired at Findlay High School as a guidance counselor for the senior class. She was 34 years old. Her caseload that first year was 193 students, every one of whom she met within the first 3 weeks of the fall semester. She wrote a college recommendation letter for every senior who asked, and she asked for nothing in return except the courtesy of being told where the kid ended up. By her 3rd year on the job, parents were calling the school's main number and asking specifically for Miss Eckhart before they would book an appointment. By her 7th, the principal was sending her the difficult kids first, because she had a way of letting a teenager talk for 40 minutes without filling the silence. In 2007, she received the district's Counselor of the Year award, a framed certificate that hung above her desk for the next 16 years. The same year, she chaired the committee that revised the school's college application timeline, pushing FAFSA filings from January to October to catch more federal aid for first-generation students. The change worked. Findlay's federal aid receipts climbed 22% the following year. The superintendent named her in the local paper. She clipped the article and tucked it in the bottom drawer of her desk, beside a candy dish of butterscotch wrappers and a stack of unopened recommendation requests. By 2009, she had been at Findlay High for 5 years. Her evaluations called her an irreplaceable institutional asset, and the district had named her department chair. That same year, a senior named Caleb Renner died in a single-car crash on Route 12 the week before prom. He was 17 years old. He had been accepted to the University of Dayton on a partial engineering scholarship. The town did what small towns in Ohio do when a kid like that dies. It built something. The Caleb Renner Memorial Scholarship was established in the fall of 2009 by a coalition of Caleb's parents, a half-dozen local Rotarians, 2 Findlay business owners who had employed him part-time at a hardware store on Tiffin Avenue, and the pastor of the Methodist church his family attended. The initial endowment seated at about $12,000 from a single weekend of envelope passing at 3 church services. Within 3 years, an annual 5K race down Main Street and a quiet envelope passing tradition at Findlay Trojans home football games had brought the fund closer to $40,000. By 2017, the scholarship was dispersing between $8,000 and $15,000 every spring to graduating seniors who reminded the board, in a 1-page essay, of the boy they had lost. The board itself was made up of people whose only qualifications were grief and decency. Caleb's parents, Patricia and Tom Renner, served as honorary chairs. The Rotarians handled the 5K logistics. The Methodist Church collected the envelopes at home games. None of them were accountants. None of them had run an endowment before. And none of them wanted to spend their evenings reconciling bank statements line by line, because every line in the ledger was a reminder of what the line existed for. The board needed someone inside the school to administer the award, someone who could read the essays, talk to the teachers, vet the applicants, write the checks, and keep the binder current from year to year. The board needed someone they trusted with the most important thing they had left of their son. They asked Donna Eckhart. She volunteered before they finished the sentence. Patricia Renner later told investigators that she had not even considered a second candidate. Sole signatory authority, no co-signer, no mandatory audit, no second set of eyes on the checkbook. The board met twice a year, once in October to approve the budget Eckhart presented to them in a clean 1-page summary. Once in May to congratulate the winners she had selected and read their essays aloud. Between those 2 meetings, the account at Huntington Bank on East Sandusky Street belonged to her alone. The bank statements were mailed to a P.O. box she had set up in 2010, in her name, paid for out of the scholarship account itself. The board's faith in her was not naive. It was earned. By every measurable standard, Donna Eckhart was exactly the kind of person you would hand a memorial fund to. She had written Caleb Renner's own letter of recommendation for the University of Dayton in the spring of 2009. She had cried at his funeral. She had run the first 5K in a t-shirt with his photograph on the back. That was the entire problem. The fund existed because the town trusted her. The fund stayed unaudited because the town trusted her. And by the time anyone thought to ask a single question, 6 years of disbursements had already gone out the door. The first false check cleared on the morning of May 14th, 2017. It was made out to a graduating senior named Tyler Banks in the amount of $4,000, drawn on the Caleb Renner Memorial Scholarship account at Huntington Bank. The signature on the front was Donna Eckhart's. The endorsement on the back, looped and confident and slightly leaning right, was also Donna Eckhart's. There was no Tyler Banks in the Findlay High class of 2017. There was no Tyler Banks at Findlay High School at all. The award letter explaining the gift had been printed on official school letterhead, signed in the same hand, and slipped into the scholarship binder at the back of her bottom desk drawer between a real letter for a senior named Bradley Ortiz and a real letter for a senior named Hannah Vance. She moved the $4,000 into a personal checking account she had opened the year before at First Federal of Lakewood, 60 miles east of Findlay, under the name Donna Marie Bushnell. Bushnell was her maiden name. The next morning she came to work at 7:15, brewed the coffee for the front office, and walked a junior through a schedule change for fall semester. The method was patient, and it never changed. Every spring she selected the legitimate winners, the ones whose names would be read at the awards assembly in front of 200 parents. She wrote those checks too, in correct amounts, and watched the genuine recipients smile when she handed them over in the hallway the next morning. Then she wrote a second set of checks, in amounts ranging from $1,500 to $4,000, to seniors who had transferred out of the district, to students who had graduated 4 or 5 years earlier, and no one would ever ask after, and to 2 or 3 names every cycle that belonged to no human being at all. Tyler Banks was the first invented name. Caitlin Reeves was the second, drawn from a license plate she had passed on her way to work. Jordan Pyle was the third, the name of a cousin's child she had never actually met. By 2020, she was fabricating 1 or 2 new recipients every spring, picking surnames from the obituary section of the Courier and first names that matched the demographic profile of a Findlay graduating class. She never used the same fake name twice. She never used a name that belonged to a real Findlay student, living or graduated. She was, in her own quiet way, methodical. She forged the endorsements herself. In a loose looping cursive, she varied just enough between names to look like 4 different teenagers had signed 4 different checks. She fabricated the award letters on the school's letterhead template, printed them on the counseling office's networked printer at 4 in the afternoon when the building was empty, and dropped photocopies into the scholarship binder beside the real letters. The fake letters were good. The fake letters were so good that the board, on the rare occasion someone flipped through the binder during an October meeting, would compliment her on how thorough she was. She escalated. By 2020, she had begun shorting the real winners as well. A senior would be informed at the spring awards assembly that she had been awarded $3,000. The check would arrive in the mail 2 weeks later for $1,500. The accompanying letter, also from Eckhart's printer, would explain in 2 short paragraphs that the smaller amount reflected reduced donations during the academic year. The 18-year-old, gratefully, would deposit the check the same afternoon and never ask. Their parents, distracted by graduation parties and dorm shopping, would not ask either. 18-year-olds do not audit gifts. That was the entire logic of the operation. Cash collected at the annual 5K was logged at a fraction of what was actually raised. If 63 runners paid $25 each at the registration table on Main Street, the ledger entry submitted to the board might read 40 runners. The difference, $400 or $500 in 20s and 10s, went into the metal cash box on the table, and then, by the end of the weekend, into Eckhart's purse, and then, by Monday morning, into her wallet. She told herself the same thing every year. Next year I will stop. She did not stop. The pattern held because no one had any reason to look. The board saw checks going out on time, every spring, to recipients whose names appeared in the binder. Real seniors received real checks in real ceremonies. Award letters were filed. Bank statements arrived at a P.O. box that only one person ever opened. The forensic accountant, who would eventually unspool the whole thing later, told Patricia Renner that the operation worked because it was boring, because it was patient, and because the person running it never showed up for work in a new car. By the end of the 2022 award cycle, she had diverted, by the prosecutor's later count, $143,000. By the end of the 2023 cycle, $181,400. The money paid down a Discover card she had carried a balance on since 2014. It paid for a 1-bedroom timeshare in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, that she and Greg used 4 weekends a year. It paid for a new washer and dryer from the Lowe's on Tiffin Avenue, a vinyl fence around the backyard on Cherry Street, the propane bill in February of 2021, and a long weekend in Chicago for her 28th wedding anniversary. None of it was extravagant. None of it would have looked out of place on a guidance counselor's salary if anyone had bothered to add it up. That was part of why no one noticed. In May of 2023, a Findlay mother named Karen Holtzman opened her daughter's mail at the kitchen island on a Wednesday evening after a 12-hour nursing shift. Her daughter, Bryn, a senior at Findlay High, had been named a Caleb Renner Memorial Scholar at the awards assembly 2 weeks earlier. The award, as announced on stage by Donna Eckhart herself, was $4,000. The check in the envelope, paper-clipped to a letter from Eckhart on school letterhead, was for $1,500. Karen Holzman was a registered nurse at Blanchard Valley Hospital. She had been working night shifts in the cardiac unit for 16 years, and she had raised her daughter on a budget that left no room for $2,500 to disappear from a college account without an explanation. She read the letter twice. The letter explained, in 2 short paragraphs, that the smaller amount reflected reduced donations during the academic year. Karen did the math on her own donations to the 5K, which she had paid into for 4 years running. She had donated $1,200 to that fund over 4 years. Her husband had run the 5K 3 times. Her sister-in-law's bakery had donated cupcakes to every awards night since 2018. She knew the names on the board. She knew what the fund was supposed to be. The math did not work. She called Huntington Bank the next morning at 9:15. The teller on the phone was patient with her. Karen gave the teller the check number, the amount, the date, and the name of the fund. The teller asked her to hold. 8 minutes later, the teller came back on the line and said, gently, that she could not locate any record of a $4,000 disbursement to a Bryn Holzman from the Caleb Renner Memorial Scholarship account. Not that day, not that week, not that month. The only check ever disbursed to that name in the history of the account was the $1,500 Bryn already had. Karen Holzman drove to the Methodist Church on East Main Street that afternoon and asked the pastor for the contact information of the scholarship board. The pastor, who had buried Caleb Renner 16 years earlier and had read scripture at the graveside, gave her a handwritten list of names and a phone number for Caleb's mother, Patricia. Karen called that night from the front porch after Bryn had gone upstairs to study. Patricia Renner picked up on the 3rd ring. Within 72 hours, the board had requested every bank statement from the previous 5 years from Huntington. Within 2 weeks, they had retained a forensic accountant out of Toledo named Dale Fermonic, a CPA with 26 years of nonprofit fraud experience. Within 3 weeks, Fermonic had told them, in a closed-session meeting in the church basement, that the fund had been hemorrhaging for at least 6 years, and that one signature appeared on every irregularity he had flagged. Patricia Renner did not speak for the rest of the meeting. On June 14, 2023, the board chair drove to the Hancock County Sheriff's Office on County Road 140 and asked to speak with a detective. He brought the binder with him in a brown leather satchel that had once belonged to his late father. Donna Eckhart was at school that day, writing a recommendation letter for a junior applying to a summer pre-med program at Ohio State. We are about to get into the investigation and the trial that followed. Before we do, if this case is hitting you the way it hit me, drop a comment for the families who raised this money. Subscribe if you want to see how the system actually handles cases like this one. We do not look away here. These stories get buried everywhere else. The lead detective assigned to the case was Sergeant Marisa Whitcomb of the Hancock County Sheriff's Office, a 14-year veteran who had served as the school resource officer at Findlay High for 3 of those years. Whitcomb knew Donna Eckhart. She had, at one point in 2016, walked a freshman in crisis down to Eckhart's office and watched Eckhart sit with the kid for 90 minutes without checking her watch once. Whitcomb opened the binder on a conference room table the size of a kitchen island and started turning pages with a pair of cotton evidence gloves on. The fabrication revealed itself slowly and then all at once. The first thing Whitcomb noticed was that several of the award letters used a slightly different version of the school letterhead than the official one currently in use by the district. The seal at the top of the page was a hair too small. The font on the date line was off by half a point. The address footer was missing the district's updated phone number from the 2018 rebrand. The letters were homemade. The second thing she noticed was that 4 of the named recipients across 6 award cycles did not appear in any Findlay City Schools enrollment record her office could pull. Not as current students. not as graduates, not as transfers in, not as transfers out. They had never been enrolled at any Hancock County public school, at any point, in any grade. A teenager named Tyler Banks did not exist. A senior named Caitlin Reeves did not exist. A young man named Jordan Pyle did not exist. The district registrar pulled records back to 1992 and could not produce a single match. Investigators subpoenaed the bank. Huntington produced 6 years of check images on a hard drive within 5 business days. Whitcomb laid the printouts across the conference table in chronological order, all 24 flagged checks, front and back. Every single endorsement on every fabricated check was written in the same hand. The same right slanting cursive. The same looped lowercase d. The same long flourish on the final letter of every signature. She did not need a handwriting expert to see it. She walked down the hall, opened a banker's box of recommendation letters her own department had subpoenaed from the school district's permanent files, and laid them beside the check endorsements. The same D, the same flourish, the same patient, school counselor, cursive. A handwriting expert from the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, based out of the BCI lab in London, Ohio, confirmed the match the following Thursday. The endorsements on 23 of 24 flagged checks were, with reasonable professional certainty, written by Donna Marie Eckhart. The forensic accountant produced a final tally that matched what the board had feared. $181,400 diverted between January of 2017 and May of 2023. 17 fabricated recipients across 6 award cycles. 11 real recipients shorted, with the difference between announced and disbursed amounts pocketed. 5 5K cash boxes underreported, with the unreported portion walked out of the church basement on Sunday afternoons in unmarked envelopes. The deposits all went to one place. A personal checking account at First Federal of Lakewood, opened in October of 2016 under the name Donna Marie Bushnell. The account had received deposits from no other source for 7 years. The smoking gun arrived on a Tuesday in late June. Investigators pulled the original Tyler Banks check from a Huntington archive box in Columbus, the $4,000 award from May of 2017, and laid it beside a real recommendation letter Eckhart had written that same spring for a Findlay senior named Anna Whitfield, a letter that had been sealed inside Anna's college application packet to Miami of Ohio. The signatures on the 2 documents were not identical. They were not supposed to be. Eckhart had been careful enough to vary the cursive between her fabricated endorsements, but the structural features were a match. The looped lowercase d, the long flourish on the final letter, the slight rightward slant on the capital. The hand that opened doors for real Findlay seniors had invented a fake one to rob a dead one's name. Sergeant Whitcomb later said that was the moment she stopped feeling sorry for the woman she was about to arrest. The arrest happened on a Wednesday morning, June 28, 2023, at 10:15 in the morning. Sergeant Whitcomb arrived at Findlay High School with 2 uniformed deputies and a search warrant for the counseling office, the scholarship binder, the school computer, and any printed records related to the Caleb Renner Memorial Scholarship. The principal, James Pelletier, walked them down the second-floor hallway, past lockers stripped for summer cleaning. Whitcomb knocked once on the open door. Donna Eckhart was at her desk. She was wearing a soft blue cardigan and reading glasses on a beaded chain. She was finishing an email to a parent about summer SAT prep at Sylvan Learning Center. She looked up at the deputies and then at Whitcomb, and her face did something that Whitcomb later described in her report as recognition without surprise. Sergeant Whitcomb: "Donna, I need you to come with us. We have a warrant." Donna Eckhart: "Is this about the scholarship?" Sergeant Whitcomb: "We're going to talk about all of that downtown, Donna." Donna Eckhart: "Can I finish this email first? It's about a kid." Sergeant Whitcomb: "No." She stood up slowly. She picked up her purse from the bottom drawer of the desk, the same drawer the scholarship binder had lived in for 13 years. She did not cry. She did not protest. She asked, in a voice that the deputy standing in the doorway later wrote down verbatim in his supplemental report, whether they could go out the back of the building rather than the front, because she knew the summer driver's ed seniors were waiting in the front lobby for their 3:30 session, and she did not want them to see her like this. They took her out the back. She was processed at the Hancock County Jail on West Crawford Street and released on her own recognizance 4 hours later. She did not return to the school. The district placed her on unpaid administrative leave that same afternoon at 3:45 by phone and terminated her employment the following Monday after a closed session board meeting that lasted 40 minutes. 19 years of service at Findlay High School ended in a single registered email from the superintendent's office. Donna Eckhart was indicted by a Hancock County grand jury on August 9, 2023. The indictment listed 4 counts: aggravated theft under Ohio Revised Code, Section 29-13. 02, a felony of the 3rd degree, for the diversion of more than $150,000 from a private fund, tampering with records under Section 29-13. 42, a felony of the 3rd degree, for the fabrication of award letters on official school letterhead, forgery under Section 2913.31, a felony of the 5th degree, for the 17 endorsed check images, and a separate count of theft in office, which the state would later drop as part of the plea agreement. She hired Marcus Greer of Greer and Holcomb in Lima, a defense attorney with 31 years of state court experience and a reputation for keeping first-time, non-violent offenders out of state prison. Greer filed motions to suppress the binder, arguing it had been seized from school property without a clean chain of custody. The motions were denied by Judge Eleanor Strauss in November of 2023. He filed motions to exclude the BCI handwriting expert's testimony as unduly prejudicial. Those were denied as well in February of 2024. By the fall of 2024, it was clear to everyone in the room that there would be no trial. The evidence was too clean. The handwriting was too obvious. The bank records were too neat. The fabricated binder Eckhart had built to cover her tracks had instead become the prosecution's most thorough exhibit. On January 17, 2025, Donna Eckhart appeared in Hancock County Common Pleas Court before Judge Eleanor Strauss and pleaded guilty to 1 count of aggravated theft and 1 count of forgery. The remaining counts were dismissed under the plea agreement. Sentencing was scheduled for March 11th. The sentencing hearing on March 11th, 2025, lasted just over 3 hours. 7 victim impact statements were read into the record. The first was delivered by Caleb Renner's mother, Patricia Renner, who had served on the scholarship board for 16 years and who had asked, before the hearing began, to read her statement, standing rather than seated. Patricia Renner: My son has been dead for 16 years, Donna. We raised that money in his name so that other people's children would have a piece of him, so that other Findlay seniors would walk across a stage and carry a little bit of Caleb with them into the rest of their lives. What you took was not money. It was the only thing we had left of him to give. You knew that. You knew exactly what that fund was. You sat in our living room and you cried with us at the first 5K. You ran in his t-shirt. And then you went home and you wrote a check to a child who did not exist, and you cashed it. Karen Holzman read the second statement. Bryn Holzman, by then a sophomore at Ohio Northern University studying nursing, read the third. 2 former Renner scholars, whose awards had been shorted by Eckhart, read the 4th and 5th. The pastor of the Methodist Church on East Main read the 6th. The 7th and final statement was read by Sergeant Whitcomb, on behalf of the 17 invented students whose forged endorsements would now sit in a Hancock County evidence box forever. Judge Strauss delivered the sentencing statement from a prepared text. She read it slowly and without inflection. Judge Strauss: Miss Eckhart, you held a position of profound trust in this community for 19 years. That trust was given to you by grieving parents who had nothing left to give but their child's name and a small amount of money raised in his memory. You did not steal from a bank. You did not steal from a corporation with insurance and lawyers and a fraud department. You stole from the dead, and you stole from the living children who would have received what was meant for them. You sat on the board that hired you. You wrote the letters that vouched for you. The court finds no mitigating circumstance, no economic hardship, no medical condition, no personal tragedy that outweighs the deliberateness, the duration, and the cruelty of what you did. 6 years, 17 invented children, $181,400. You will serve 30 months in the Ohio Reformatory for Women in Marysville. You will pay full restitution in the amount of $181,400. You will never again hold a position of fiduciary or educational trust in the state of Ohio. Your teaching license is revoked. Your counseling license is revoked. This court is adjourned. Donna Eckhart was transported to the Ohio Reformatory for Women in Marysville, Ohio, on March 14, 2025. The facility is a medium-security state prison housing approximately 2,400 women across multiple housing units. Her projected release date is September of 2027. Her husband, Greg, filed for divorce in May. The house on Cherry Street went on the market in July. The Caleb Renner Memorial Scholarship Board reconstituted itself in the fall of 2023 with a treasurer, a co-signer requirement on every check above $200, and a mandatory quarterly audit conducted by Dale Furmanic's firm out of Toledo, paid for by the Rotary Club. The 2025 award was dispersed on time in May to 3 real Findlay seniors who had each written essays about a boy they had never met, but whose name they had grown up seeing on the side of a 5K banner. This case was quiet, but the next case on the right-hand side of your screen is something else entirely.